What's up, everyone? Welcome back to StrangeCast, a podcast made by Life is Strange fans for Life is Strange fans. I am one of your hosts, Adnan, and always as well on this podcast, our other co-host, Adam, is here. Adam, how are you doing?
It sounds like I'm doing a little bit better than you. We talked off camera. We're both a little sick, but I ate some kiwis, so I'm okay. You did not eat any kiwis, so you're not doing.
No, I did not eat any kiwis, and I think I'm only cusping of like being ill, so I've not been like ill, but I'm thinking it's going to come to me. And we're fully in flu season at this point, so I'm already prepared for it, mentally prepared for it.
Yeah, same thing. I'm pretty sure you're the one that got me sick, since we're in close proximity to each other, pretty much neighbors at this point.
Just fight it over a Zoom call. And but yeah, so like obviously we're back for StrangeCast. Just a quick update on a couple of things before we start the actual episode, which includes that Life After Strange is back. So if you haven't been on my channel, episode 25 debuted with Anastasia Davidson, who was Diane Jacobs in Life is Strange True Colors. First True Colors actor I had on in there, and also hitting 25 episodes of the series. It's been reformatted, it's been revamped. You'll see it quite different from the other show that I used to do. And as a kind of like consensus, more episodes will come to that series, but they won't be as regular as it was almost a year ago, because I kind of ruined the quality of the content by doing that, because I was trying to pull out more episodes rather than spending as much time as I did with the Anastasia interview. And you see the difference in terms of just the questions I was able to ask her and kind of pick out of her. So that's something that I kind of wanted to bring up first. And then on top of that, I need to address this before we carry on. StrangeCast will come to iTunes and all other podcast platforms in the future. I've had requests for it. If people do want that, I will get it on those platforms. It's just a busy couple of weeks at the moment, but I will look into it and I'll upload the first episode, and then I'll upload the entire catalog up to where we're up to now. So that there's no issue with that. But if there is a demand and people have asked for it, we will put it on those platforms so you can watch it. So getting away from all the plugging for my account and everything else, we are on StrangeCast. True Colors has been out. We're recording this late October, so hopefully I think it'll come out in early November. And True Colors has been out for over a month. And we're going to go with the first piece of news, Adam, which is obviously that Life is Strange Twitter account confirmed that the True Colors release date announcement was made, which you can see on their Twitter page. And also they released a screenshot from the game. I will let you take it from here. Let me know what you think of just what it looked like as well.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up now because I remember looking at the what's the release date? Because I remember looking at it, the screenshot, and I just remember thinking it's pretty impressive for a Nintendo Switch patch. Now, we only have one screenshot, and it is just a close-up of Alex. And yeah, you can see some, like a little bit of less anti-aliasing here. It's a little bit more jagged. But at the same time, it's a Nintendo Switch product, you know. We're happy to announce digital edition will release early December.
Okay. So there's no specific date. So I wouldn't guarantee that's not going to get pushed back as well, because it could, with the way that the development has been and how we've got different parts of content. So realistically, I could see that coming late December if they do push it back a bit, but optimistically staying there. So yeah, like generally speaking, when I saw the screenshot, I was like, yeah, I'm impressed. It looks good. It should run well on the Switch. Obviously, it's not, you know, we're not talking a huge AAA game that's like pushing the limits of like, like a Metal Gear Solid 5 or something where the maps open and all that.
Off the top of your head here.
Yeah, it's not like it's just there or something. But, that's like the first example. Because I was thinking like, the GTA trilogy is coming to the Switch. So it's like, I think like you have potential of like getting those kind of games on there. True Colors as well looks good as well. And I hope that because of like how the way that this game launched on Xbox, PlayStation, the current consoles, and the kind of like hiccups that they had and all the patches that they released and updates, I'm hoping that they spend just a little bit more time getting the Switch version really fully polished up and then releasing it. And I think they're going to have their backs up against the wall because they want to get out for the Christmas market with the Switch as well. It's such a hugely successful platform anyway, Switch on in the US as well. So that you might as well try and capitalize on the sales. Well, yeah, I'm digging it, and go on.
That's it. I think if you're primarily on the Switch, if you're actually primarily on the Switch, I don't think you're actually going to care that much that it looks like a little bit less quality than the Xbox or PlayStation versions. I'm not even going to put PC on this because even PC version is a little bit off kilter, but at the same time, you're primarily on Switch, and I think Switch owners have been begging for Life is Strange to come onto the Switch because it's perfect for the Switch. It is their market. Yeah. So the story of it, I think, will connect to Switch fans more. But yeah, it's a little crazy, and I appreciate they're actually bringing it over, and it looks presentable from what we see in just this simple screenshot. It looks playable. Like, that's the thing. It doesn't look like now Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remastered on the Switch. That looked jank. That I don't know. I didn't like the way it came out, but again, at least it's on the Switch. You can play Tony Hawk on the go. That's great. I'm all for that, but this one at least looks fairly similar to the console launch in terms of like what a Switch game could be.
Yeah, I feel like as I said, like I don't think that there's a huge amount of like limitation of porting that kind of game off of the PS5 and Xbox and PC version, putting it on Switch. And you took the words out of my mouth as well. I said this even before StrangeCast started. Like, there should have been a Switch version of the Life is Strange 1 and before Storm 2. They're made for that kind of console. It's so easy for you to pick it up and kind of play it. And there's not, like I said, there's not like a huge amount of like, it's not Call of Duty Warzone or something where you're playing it on that level. Right. So I feel like there's huge potential for that. And they should tap into that market as well. If Square Enix really want to drive the sales as well, which I'll bring up later on, but if they really want to drive the sales up for this and sell it the way that they are doing it, they're going to have to get on Switch because there's a huge consumer base there. And for like, obviously people who are going to play Switch single player games, you're going to appeal to them quite a lot. So I'm excited for it. I'm just hoping that they meet their release window. Obviously, if they don't, they're going to have to push it back. But I think optimistically, they will get it in that window that they have for December. But yeah, I've had my say. Do you have anything else before we carry on?
No, I'm just very happy that it's coming on. I'm definitely gonna, well, I shouldn't say definitely picking up for Switch. I will eventually pick it up for Switch just because it's been my dream to just turn on Switch and play Life is Strange. But no, at least it's coming over. And like you said, it could be delayed because they are saying early December. As long as it's not delayed to February, because February 2022 is just stacked. I think it's just going to be pushed under the rug if it gets released in February 2022, but it is what it is.
Indeed. And we'll move on to our next topic, which is going to be probably a bit more chunkier. I'm kind of focusing on, do we think that the next Life is Strange is in development, and is Deck 9 working on something that is non-Life is Strange related? Yes. So it's a bit of a meaty topic on both of those. And I think, like, for me, just to kind of start, I think that obviously the next game is in development. That's a presumption from what I can tell in terms of like what I can see in the way that because like, even when you look at the timescale, I think when chapter 5 in True Colors was coming out, they had already moved on to the Wavelengths DLC. And it's not just necessarily just Deck 9 that's developing the game. They also have like the Square Enix design and developing teams that are like around the world where they can like bring them in. They did it with BTS. Yeah. So they can kind of like have that extra manpower, womanpower. They can bring those people in if they need them. And I think like for that reason, this game is in development because the Vicelli comic series ends this coming year. So that comic arc is done. The Max Chloe one that they were doing through the comic series ends. And then you go through it's like, what happens next for Life is Strange? It's like, oof, it's almost like cricket noises. Because obviously if we put the timeline together of like Life is Strange 1, BTS, 2, True Colors, and you have the comic book series running in between that, there's kind of like a consistency. And the way that Square Enix is marketing and positioning this franchise and series, they obviously want to move it forward and make it big. So I think like they can't leave huge amounts of gaps. And I think whether Dontnod is working on another one, like, they're working on so many games now, but like even if they're kind of like hush and working on secretly another Life is Strange game, who knows? Yeah. A lot of their main developers from the first game moved over to Montreal and working on a new IP. But like, obviously this kind of makes me want to question why I think that maybe even a second studio comes in and they do a rotation, almost like Call of Duty back in the day of like Treyarch and Infinity Ward. So I personally think it is in development. And then onto the second point, they are definitely making something else. They are working on something else. If you spend a lot of time on the internet snooping like I do, I've done it a lot of times, and any fan can do it, you'll be able to put puzzle pieces together, because there's a thing as well that you mentioned in, I think, our True Colors episode that we did for StrangeCast, where I was talking about, is Life is Strange True Colors a AAA game? Like, is it AA? And I think that the way that kind of like when I read about Chris Floyd's thread about why he left Deck Nine that I sent to you, and then just generally the way that True Colors was positioned, they definitely have huge ambitions for Deck Nine. I can't fault the studio either. Like every studio wants to like dream big and like make loads of games. And I think even for my own kind of like potentially position right now where I'm thinking that Deck Nine could eventually leave Square Enix and I have two feelings that either they become a first party studio within Square Enix making games specifically for them, or they kind of like break away like Dontnod did and they make their own games and they're done with Life is Strange as well at that point. Those are the two paths I see from them. But if you do as much time as I do, and I'm not going to bring up names, I had like names brought up and posts and stuff, and I obviously researched it, but I'm not going to do it because I don't want people to get in trouble or anything like that. Right. And people find this stuff online anyway. If you look, there's more than one game director there. There's a lot of developers there. They're working on something else. There are some actors who are also working on their game as well, I imagine as well, from what I can tell. Like, as I said, like if you do enough snooping online, you'll find the jigsaw pieces and put it together. So they're definitely working on something else. And the big question is for me is it Life is Strange, the next Life is Strange, or is it a non-Life is Strange game? And I have a funny feeling it is a non-Life is Strange game. And I don't know if Square Enix is publishing it or if another publisher if they're working with another publisher with it. Who knows? So like that's where I'm at position. So I think that there's big things happening for Deck Nine because obviously they only touched the cusp of like success with Before Storm, and now like they had that huge potential chance with True Colors. It worked out really well for them, and I think we'll see some very interesting things from them going forward.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. It could be a little column A, a little column B, or it could be both. It could be a Life is Strange game, or it could be a non-Life is Strange game. Both, because they are a massive enough studio where they have their own motion cap studio. They are a big company, and like you said before, they have multiple game directors, they have multiple actors, they have multiple developers, and they could all be working on separate things at the same time. A studio their size isn't like it's not impossible. I think we've seen it before with what's the one I'm looking for? Where not Insomniac, but Insomniac has worked on separate projects all at once. But
well, they're doing it now as well with the Wolverine game, and they're doing the Spider-Man sequel. So they got 2 games in development. I think the Wolverine game's so early in development as well. Like that teaser was just a very, very early like footage for you. And I think they'll be heavily recruiting for that. Obviously, Spider-Man's well into development and hugely into development. So exactly. They've obviously manpowered it. And I think that expectations with Deck 9 as well to kind of like make more than one game, get more people in the door, kind of like explore it. I just don't think they want to be known as the Life is Strange studio, because like even now like that still rubs people the wrong way, where it's like they're so strongly affiliated with Dontnod, and you know, obviously you can be as well. Like there's no issue with that. Sure. They made the games, they made the franchise what it was like to start with. Mm-hmm. So like I think like they kind of want to be. I don't think any studio necessarily wants to be associated as just that one that's with one game. I think like you kind of want to explore ideas, you kind of want to do it, and every studio has done it in history where it's like whether it's Guerrilla Games going away from Killzone and then other studios, you'll see it with that.
So I do want to read this one comment that got on Don the Bomb's video where he talks about the first news and hints for Life is Strange 4. You probably saw this as well, but he actually shared a comment on his video by Ocean Met the Sky. So take this with a ginormous grain of salt. Take this with a boulder of salt because it is a YouTube comment, okay? But hear this. Ocean Met the Sky comments, I messaged Deck 9 a month ago or so asking if we ever see Max and Chloe again. They responded to me and said they would love to make another game starring them, but that is also up to their partner, Square Enix. They told me to message Square Enix directly and let them know fans want another game starring them, which I'm sure they know by now. Square Enix knows that by now. But this alone says that there is a complete possibility and a desire for a game of the people who own the franchise now. What Dontnod said years ago about their story being done doesn't matter because they no longer are associated with the games. And to be fair, what they said anyway back then was that their company was done with that story and others were free to expand on it. Hence, Deck 9 definitely could. So like you said before, when this person's commenting saying like, oh, well, Deck Nine could be the people. But what did Deck Nine just say? Like message Square Enix. So I think to your points where there could be another studio working on a Life is Strange game, Deck Nine would love to, but there could be another studio that Deck Nine knows about that is under the Square Enix umbrella that is already working on the Max and Chloe story. So it could be passed on to another one and saying like, oh, why don't you message them over there? So again, giant grain of salt. But I think to your points with this commenter saying that like, oh yeah, I was told to message Square Enix, but I don't know what other studio, like maybe Crystal Dynamics. If Crystal Dynamics made a Life is Strange game, that would be really cool. But they're not going to. They're way too busy. I think they're doing so. What are they doing? I remember they announced the game, or they announced that they're in partnership with another company. But so Crystal Dynamics is pretty busy. Plus, they're trying to they're trying to revive Avengers right now. So
I don't think anything's going to revive Avengers now. But yeah, so that comment, obviously, again, pure speculation. That's just one person. So I think like we have to really be careful with that comment, because obviously it's just, I could go in that comment section and be like, yeah, I know the next Life is Strange game with my insider sources.
Exactly. Grain of salt here, but
because like the ones that I've like mentioned, obviously, the stuff where I was saying that I think there is something else in development. Like I said, I do a lot of snooping. It includes LinkedIn posts, profiles. I look through actors. There's a lot of things you can do if you get as bored as I do, where you can kind of just like snoop. And I love snooping. It's my favorite thing. But like, I think with that, like, well, it does confirm one thing. I think that's a very automated response from Deck Nine, whoever sent that to that person, which is basically saying that we're not going to get in the territory of saying, oh yeah, we're going to make a Max and Chloe game, and then like, that person obviously tells the entire internet. I think they're pretty much establishing, which is fact anyway, which is that the IP is owned by Square Enix. They have the final say on whatever happens.
Right.
So that's that. And like with Deck Nine, I think one of their developers, was it Jonathan Zimmerman? Oh, I can't remember. On the top of my head, someone came out prior to it, and this was during the kind of like the news breaking that, Dontnod and Square Enix had separated ways, and like the way that people would make out, like they basically just walked away from their partnership for what it was. And like I think one of them said, like, I think they were asked, like, will we see characters from the Dontnod games, obviously? And I think like they said, like, we can use them if we want, but it'll be like down to Square Enix, like what we do and stuff like that. And Square Enix will have the final say. And I think with Deck Nine as well, I think with the difficulty task that they had with Before the Storm and the way that it was received by fans, they were kind of like, obviously for me personally, walking into kind of like me saying, that was like me saying like, I don't know, like for example, Kojima making one Metal Gear Solid game, and then me becoming along saying, I'll make Metal Gear Solid 2, right, cool. And then be like, oh, I kind of know what the repercussions of this series is with the characters that I've got. I'm not saying it can't happen, but obviously with that, it was so early, it was literally the beginning of a franchise, which we can obviously look back now in 6 years, but it was so early on, and they were taking characters that obviously they hadn't written, but they had to kind of like explore, then they were adding like their own characters. And I think like the way that you kind of see True Colors and how it's positioned, for example, when they brought Steph back, I think that's their example where they wanted to keep the characters that they've kind of created. And I feel like if you see future Life is Strange game, I think you'll see like maybe Alex Chen come back, or Ducky or Diane. You'll see these other characters that they've created, I think, come back more so. And I think it was more of a smart choice for them, for example, to use Rihanna DeVries' Chloe Price, obviously not just in terms of the story setting and everything else, but like just in that context of bringing that character back. And same with, I think they played a safe bet with Rachel Amber, for example, because it's like, again, she was mentioned in the first game, but they kind of had more time to explore in BTS. So that will happen. I think that I do have a funny feeling that there will be a 2-studio system that comes in place for Life is Strange. I think like they can't go quiet for a long period of time. They need to bring games out. I'm not saying they bring it out yearly like Ubisoft and start churning things out. It's not going to be like that.
Yeah, that's my fear. It's just like we're going to get Life is Strange fatigue pretty soon if that happens.
No, I don't think they're going to deal with it in that kind of way. With like I think most studios try and stay away from the Ubisoft formula, because it's literally the exact same game every game you play. But I think like they will bring in another studio, funny feeling. And I think like with that, they'll kind of cope it. Because I think like, as I said, I think Deck Nine will want, I think that just for me personally, I think the Deck Nine ambition is to kind of be Quantic Dream, Dontnod style, where you make your own games, you can work with certain publishers, you can do this, and like I said, don't want to just be the Life is Strange studio.
Right.
And obviously, nothing like bad about that. Obviously, they're working an award-winning franchise with like a big, huge publisher supporting them, and like their studios growing and stuff like that. But I think that there's obviously scope and ambition for the Deck Nine team to grow and get bigger. And I think like there will be another character. I think just have a funny feeling there'll be another part that'll be introduced to kind of like just fill a good timeline in. So it's like you're regularly getting Life is Strange games. So it's not just like a yearly release. It's like every 2 years after you kind of like get a new game in the franchise and kind of like build a universe. Because like the Max and Chloe thing's really hard. It's kind of like sell now as well. Because I contradict myself. Because for me, I wouldn't necessarily want to see it now. I think too much time's passed for it. It's kind of like go back and do the stories. Because like my personal ambition would have been, and this is why I think I'll come back onto my other into the next topic as well. But I'll try and refrain myself. But with the first Life is Strange, I always felt like they could have done a trilogy with it. Max's story, and they could have easily fleshed out 3 games, almost like Lightning's story, which they tried to do in like Final Fantasy, and they tried to sell it to Square Enix, but it just wasn't the right character. You wanted to do it with someone like Cloud Strife, but they're probably going to do it with 2 parts now with the FF7 remake. But this is what I thought with Max, that you could do it. And I think like whether you like the Vicelli comic series or not, I think that proves that there was a case to make a follow-up, and they're doing it in the comic book series. I like certain parts of the Vicelli series, what she's done with the comic series, what she's telling with the characters and the storyline as well. So I think that there was potential for that. And I think if anything, you might see like Max come back as a cameo character. I don't think you'll see the fusion of like Max, Daniel in a game together, or like, 2 pairings, like that kind of pairing. I just think that's, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think you'll see characters weave in and out of the universe. I think it's an established universe with characters who will keep coming in and out of it. And I think I'm looking forward to if Deck Nine do touch any of the Dontnod characters, because I think there's obviously the fandom is very divided as it is. And I think Deck Nine is playing it smart. Obviously, I think like when we were setting our expectations so high for True Colors, and like we had all those characters like who could come back, could it be Brody and stuff like that? I think like they handled it better by just building this character that like, they had a solid set of characters from True Colors with a cast of them, and they brought back Mikey North, they brought back Rachel, they brought back Chloe. If you haven't played the game and you got spoiled for that, I'm sorry. It's been over a month. Like, go and play the game. But they have those like couple of characters, and it's like that's fine for me. But to kind of some of the points, yes, I definitely think that Deck Nine is working on something. Whether it's Life is Strange game, I don't know. And maybe it's even like they have a rotation. So obviously, Webb, Chris Floyd did Before the Storm. Zach Garris did True Colors, and maybe someone moves into the directing role of the next game. They do it with the God of War games. Well, Corey Barlog's not directing God of War Ragnarok. They've shifted their studio thing. They say that they do it in that kind of way as well. If someone goes into the game director role after that, it's an interesting take. I personally wouldn't do it. I think when you get success with one person, you kind of want to stick with it. So like for me personally, I'd like to see Zach Harris do the next game, depending on what it is and where it's going. But I can't have everything in life. But yeah, that's kind of like where I stand. Adam, anything else before we move on to our next topic?
Just like you said, though, it's like to shift game directors like that it's just going to upset people. If it's done with intentionality, like this game director does have an idea, this game director does. If it's just out of experimentation, I'm saying like, oh, let's see what he can come up with. Unless they have a good idea or unless they're passionate about Life is Strange, I don't think it should be done. That's why a lot of fans had problems when just another studio took it. It just leads to different interpretations of what a Life is Strange game is. And I think if we really ask ourselves, it's just like, what other studio would you want Life is Strange to be made by? And I think everybody would unanimously say Dontnod, of course. In the same way, I'm a huge Halo fan. And who would you want to make the next Halo game? Bungie. But like, yeah, but like not Destiny Bungie, like Bungie back in the day.
Yeah, it's like Treyarch and Infinity Ward for Call of Duty. Like I remember the wars that used to go on for that, and I was obviously love those games. They were classics. The same like the studios, everyone has that kind of thing with it.
Oh yeah, but that's just it. It's just like I'm satisfied with what Deck Nine is doing. If it goes to another studio, I don't want it to go into another studio. I would rather it stay in house in Deck Nine, like have another game director. If I had to make a choice, another studio or within Deck Nine and one of their game directors, just stay with Deck Nine because at least they're communicating with each other. At least they're in the same building, you know. But that's just my take. Is that it's going to happen. There's going to be a new director, but I'd rather stay with Deck Nine, you know.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think like the director thing, perspective changing is hard, and I think like I would say that more if they kind of I would want them to move on from Alex Chen and that story. I think like you have a universe here, and I feel like you should explore a bit more and mess around with characters rather than make more than one story. Even though that contradicts what I just said about Max having a trilogy, I'm kind of just saying that I think it's kind of like the tradition now where you kind of like build characters, universes, bring people in, X, Y, Z.
It's kind of like I feel like, and we're gonna go. This is a nice segue into the next topic, but I feel like Alex Chen's story is kind of complete. It feels kind of knotted together. Like it feels like, whereas the end of Life is Strange 1, it felt like there was way more story to tell afterwards, you know. But you know that goes into. I'll let you control the show.
No. It's a joint show. And before we move on to that, because I mentioned it before, because I brought up the MPD groups, they released the sales hardware and software sales data. Caught in the news recently. This was back in, when was it now? It was October 18th. It was published by Gaming Vault. And I kind of just wanted to bring it up because Life is Strange, True Colors debuted at number 10 in the sales charts, which is good for them.
Wow, yeah.
I imagine obviously publishers report higher, but you can't get everything in life. But I think that's a very solid entry for that, because obviously I think I banged on it about it in the last 2 episodes or something about like sales figures, like seeing where this series debuts. Obviously, if we're talking about like AAA status that we were like kind of mentioning and AA status, this is obviously a big game for them. They kind of want to make sure the sales go up for it. And it seems to have debuted very solid. And obviously this is in between, like, you know, it's not going to debut at number 1 because like FIFA 22 is in there, for example, NBA 2K22, Diablo Resurrected. There's games in there that it's going to, for me, if it overtook some of those, I'd be like, oh, right, wow. I was like, there's an achievement for, if anything. But yeah, it debuted at number 10, and I kind of just wanted to bring it up because I think that's solid for all platforms as well. Solid, seems like solid figures. Hopefully we get maybe more specific ones. But yeah, generally I kind of just want to bring that up because I think that there's something about that where I think that obviously if that's those sales figures, Square Enix are already like, let's, you know, next game, get in development, start planning it out, start working around the things. And then from that, we can move on. And with that, we move on as well, Adam.
Yes.
So obviously before we get into our main topic of the show, I kind of spliced this one in because I kind of wanted to see perspective. So as I said, over a month has passed since Life is Strange True Colors has been released. Obviously, you get this episode early November, and we're recording it late October. But I kind of wanted to ask Adam as well as my own, has your opinions changed on True Colors since the post-honeymoon period? Because everyone has rose-tinted glasses on when the first 7 days of the game comes out, which is really hard as well, because obviously we live in a consumer base where you get a review after you released. And I remember writing reviews myself, and then thinking afterwards, like, And even with films as well, like I watch Squid Games, and I'm not part of the hype, by the way. We won't get in a fight about that. But I kind of like, that's what I mean. Like I sit down, played it, and then with True Colors, I kind of wanted to bring this up because I think over a month's passed, and we had very different views in both the Wavelengths episode and True Colors main review episode. And Adam, I'll give you the floor for this. Has your opinions changed in the post-honeymoon period?
I'm glad I had over a month to really sit on this, especially with the DLC, because back when we were recording Games and Groceries, even recording movie minutes and we had to review movies, so much harder to review movie at like right after you watched it, because of course you're just like, you have all these emotions, you just watched it. We will record it a couple days after just to have a sit on it. Now it's like over a month, and I'm still very satisfied with True Colors. I think it did well. It's now bumped down to number 2 on my Life is Strange ranking. It was above the original Life is Strange, but I think I had some time to settle, and I've replayed it. I played through it twice now, and I started Life is Strange 1 again. I played the first episode of Life is Strange 1, and Yeah, I think my opinions have changed a little bit. Kind of just like the hype of it. It was a new Life is Strange game. I did not like Life is Strange 2, and this was just like my type of game. I love Colorado. I love like this section because I live in North Dakota now, so somewhat similar, not really. But yeah, I love this area, so I think it really connected with me personally. But is it a good Life is Strange game? I think it is. However, I am less hype about it than I was. It came out in September. It is almost November. Isn't it crazy how this time passed? Like someone posted on Twitter saying it's like, oh, like after a month. It wasn't just you. It was like someone else. Like after a month since launch, what do you think? I'm like, it's been a month. Or someone said it's been a month since the DLC came out.
We're only a few months away from the remastered versions as well.
I know. Isn't that insane? Oh my goodness. Time flies. But I would say my perspectives has changed, and I'm now saying like, yeah, Life is Strange 1 is still the king, just because I played the first episode and there was something else that I missed. I've played almost 100 hours of Life is Strange 1, and I interacted something within the first episode. I was like, how did I miss it? There was something I missed in Life is Strange 1, and I couldn't believe it. Whereas I feel like I experienced everything with True Colors. I feel like I interacted with everything because it was just so close together. You can interact with only a certain amount of things that it felt more linear than Life is Strange 1. I don't know. That's kind of stupid to say, but that's my opinion.
No, it's a very good opinion. I think you should go back and watch this episode as well, because you see my facial reactions when you said that you realized that it's not better than 1, which I was like,
no, I see you. You're on my big screen right now, so I see your face reaction.
You can remove that True Colors stan thing that you had in your bio as well, as you kindly took, and then also your diss and Life is Strange 2. You're already Life is Strange 2 fans. I've got you back here. Don't worry. We will explore that in a later topic as well. Don't worry. I've already mentioned to Adam his Life is Strange 2.
I'm doing it live on the show. Instead of Stan, I'm changing it to Fan and save.
Right. Okay. So with True Colors, obviously, I'm thankful. Like we did 2 episodes in the Wavelengths and True Colors review discussion. No one really like called me out. Like really, I thought I was going to get like people saying, "How dare you not like this?" And like I said before, and I think you even like covered for me in that, I didn't hate the game. I really, no. I would, if anyone took that away from my opinion, I'd be like, no. Yeah, I was left wanting for a lot of it, because I think like, and this will kind of go into our main topic afterwards, but I'll kind of like try and stay on the cusp of it. What happens with like Life is Strange True Colors was like the way that I saw it in the first trailer and that review trailer, I was like, here we go, giving Deck 9 that kind of potential to kind of make their own game, all this. And then it felt so similar to 1. And like I said, we'll come on to this in a little bit, but it felt very similar to that. And that's where my expectation fell, because 1, and it's not like 1 will forever be the greatest game of all time. I think franchises can eventually surpass their originals. Like it's the same debate of like any film, like, is The Godfather Part 2 better than Godfather? Is Aliens better than Aliens? It's a difficult one, because like there's very few sequels, even in films. I think you can try and put a debate of like, is it better? Does it surpass the original? It is a hard debate. And there are quite a few examples that I think you can make that debate. The problem with 1 is, like you just said, you played 100 hours your own experience. And I remember playing the first episode of 1, and I remember finishing it. I played through. I was like, damn. I was like, wow. I was like, I don't even think Dontnod realized what they tapped into here. And same with Square Enix. Square Enix, I think, obviously for me personally, I don't think Square Enix had any idea of what was going to follow from this.
Oh, no.
And I think 1 just changed it. And even though when you could like me pitching someone like, yeah, it's a coming of age story about a 16-year-old girl who goes back to her hometown of Oregon. She has powers of rewind. It's like, oh, powers of rewind time. But no, there's something more special with it. Intricately built storylines, characters, the setting, the universe, the gameplay experiences is truly like changing for an episodic genre at that time. I think that's where like I was like that. But then when I was playing True Colors, I was waiting for those moments where I was like, change the genre. You're the first entry in the series where you're fully 5 chapters all released at the same time. Change it. Show me something different that you're not doing. You're not just doing it as the same as the first Life is Strange. Where's the gameplay? It's like, are you changing something? The emotion mechanic did things in parts, But like, I think the main thing for me was like towards the end where it's like you started seeing the repercussions of like in the meeting area. I'm not going to try and go into too much spoil, but you know where that point where decisions kind of like play things, and the emotion mechanic was just, it lacked the little bit, and that brought it down for me. And I feel like I said, I won't go too much into it because I want to wait for the next topic segment, but I'm more interested about going back and playing it for me personally. I haven't played it since I finished it. I haven't played Wavelengths since I finished it. I plan on picking the PS4 version up because I want to platinum those trophies as well, and add them to my collection of like being a hoarder that I am.
Would it be different? Like the trophies would be different for the PS5 and PS4 edition?
Yeah, well, you get two separate lists. So
yeah.
They do with like a lot of games now, and like that has a separate list, so I can kind of go back. I've the same with the PS3 version of Life is Strange and PS4 version of Life is Strange, two separate lists. Same, identical for like specifications blocking, but they're separate. So I do plan on going back and playing Life is Strange 1 at some point to get those, but True Colors is on my list because I want to go back and play it because, like I said, I didn't hate it, I didn't dislike it. I was just kind of like wanting a little bit. I was playing through a lot of it. I was like, I was like picking my own flaws, personal flaws with it. And I felt like when I was reading reviews, I was like, it's really being praised. And then I'm like sitting there thinking about when Life is Strange 2 came out and the reception that got, and I was like, it's like, this doesn't really make sense to me. I'm completely in a different camp. And like when you told me that it's your favorite Life is Strange game, I was like, maybe we just cancel this podcast now. Cause it's like, no. Yeah, you can like it more than thingy. But like for me, personally, it's my third favorite game in the series. Like if that's kind of like put where I'd put it in the rankings.
Yeah.
But I kind of, there was just something with it. And like now that I've had more time to sit on it, digest it, I just think like there had been points, I think like you could have made it really, really phenomenal. And obviously I'm saying phenomenal because it's a great game anyway, but a phenomenal game. Had there just been certain things that had been tweaked, ironed out, a bit more kind of like expansion and the sound of that AAA status game. I still have that issue with the price as well. I'm like, I just don't justify that. For like the expectation that I had from it, it just fell a little bit short.
Yeah.
And like, that's where I'm at the point. And I'm like, I just want to go back and play it and see where I stand. I don't think my opinion is going to really change, to be honest. Right. I think like, usually most of the time when I like, there's certain things that will change my mind on like games. And obviously it's like, I think I mentioned in the other podcast when I play like Minerva's Den for BioShock 2, that changed my entire complexion of the game. I thought it was a great game anyway, BioShock 2. I think it gets hated a lot. But then Minerva's Den was like, ooh, right. And I feel like when you go back and play certain games, it adds something and it like adds the value of it. I'm like, now I can say to someone, go and buy that game. You should play the main game, then play Minerva's Den, see what you think, and then make a good criticism. And I think like when Wavelengths came out, I was like, ooh, this didn't add that same that I wanted to it. I was like, I could have easily like split up Wavelengths and slashed it into the actual main story, and even like being bold enough maybe to do two protagonists at the same time and maybe change the formula up, add something to it. I feel like there's just something there where I was like, maybe that's how I see it from that. But I don't hate it. I do want to go back and play it. So in the post-honeymoon period, I'm very open to go back and playing it and seeing what happens like when I play it second time, just from my perspective. There was just certain things there, Adam. And I feel like, for example, like Izzy, we mentioned as well, the trans character that is Steph's love interest. I was like, why do we not see it? Why is she not there? Like, why there's no flashback scene where we see Steph and her like just close and just a voice and it's like a picture, but it's like there's just. I'm not saying you can't do that. Obviously, like you're saying character, but I'm like there was more there. I remember when I picked up the one of the collectibles and it was Izzy's voice. I was like, ooh, it's like, this is interesting. And it's like, then obviously when we get to the Wavelengths, we'll see more and we'll get a bit more. And they kind of like, they just played with it. They just kind of had the idea of like, they're fleshing out in a different way. I was like, oh, I wish you could have been there. Or it's like.
So I want to bring up two things real quick. Like quick side notes. One, it's not about Life is Strange. You just reminded me when you said like, oh, when I talked on your podcast, just a little anecdote. I was looking through my old episodes, and yesterday was exactly 1 year since you first appeared on Games and Groceries. I was just like, what the heck? It's been a year. Talk about time flying. But yeah, like it was exactly a year. I was like, oh, that's fun. But little anecdote. But here's another little anecdote. So I was trying to look up all my, because I'm an Xbox schmuck. So sometimes Xbox will track how much time you put into a game. And Life is Strange, the first one, it didn't tell me how much, which I was like, thanks, Xbox. But it has said on Life is Strange True Colors, I spent 24. What's 24 plus 8? That is 32 hours. So I've put 32 hours into Life is Strange True Colors. Now, here's the interesting thing. It said number of choices made. Okay. So keep in mind, I've played Life is Strange, the first one, without exaggerating, at least 5 times through. At least 5 times, without exaggerating. I would say closer to 10, but, you know, let's keep it safe. Where I've only played Life is Strange True Colors twice. That's it, twice. Number of choices I've made in True Colors, 555 choices I've made. So 555 in True Colors. Life is Strange, 787. Those numbers are super close. Like, yeah, I've played more of Life is Strange, but I've played that much more playthroughs than I have. And when it says 555 in True Colors, I'm like, are there that many decisions to make?
It depends what they define as choice. Because this is where I get into the conversation about illusion of choice. This is what used to really harm Telltale games for me. Because like after the first incarnation of the Walking Dead series that they did, and then subsequent game, the illusion of choice was there. Like a lot of it was like there's probably like 3 or 4 main big choices like in the entire series, and the rest were just like really minor ones. And they didn't really have an impact. But like when you look at the first Life is Strange game, for example, I killed my plant because I was like, I'll just feed this water and nothing's gonna happen. I kept rewinding. So I was like, what's the difference here? And then when it killed the plant, I was like, God damn it. Because when I play those games as well, like even with True Colors, I'd never want to be in the minority. Like I was sitting at that jukebox, like making the choice. I was like, I need to find out which is the right track here. So I do not want to be in the minority of like failing this. I do not want to lose foosball. I have to be in the majority. And I think like maybe 3 or 4 out of the entire like 5 chapters, I like was in the minority. I like basically got into the main bulk of them for most of them. Yeah. But like, that choice is like, I'd like, obviously it can't, Xbox ain't telling us.
I don't know how many. Yeah. I don't know what it means by choices. Also in the first Life is Strange, I interacted with 2,600 objects. So I'm just like snooping around a lot, but where my wife, she played through True Colors once and there's 205 choices. So, you know, the math doesn't really work out there. So I just thought it was a little anecdote there that I just thought was interesting. The numbers are super close in terms of choices, but like you said, I wonder what Xbox means by how many things you've done.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Good thing they brought that up. I feel like that does add into perspective of like where it was with True Colors, because I remember just thinking like, obviously like I was just like one of my criticisms where I said like I was walking randomly down the street and just like reading people's emotions, and there was like no repercussion of Alex Chen. But like when I said like when you play the first Life is Strange and like Max rewinds time just generally like has that bleeding effect that appears on the screen, and she starts stumbling, and it was like it just made it a little bit more, just added a little bit more of like don't mess with time. Basically the message from Dontnod of like don't fuck with time. We're warning you once, don't fuck with it. But like with Alex, it was never like really, we just knew that she had this, and she was dealing with it in certain ways, but like there was no kind of like Deck 9 wasn't saying you should really, really focus on this. It's the same with like when Dontnod made Life is Strange 2, it's like Daniel has powers and you should really maybe teach him the right way, because if you're acting like a douche, maybe he'll act like a douche and then you have no control of that, and he'll destroy half like a cabin without you having control. So I think like that was one of those things. But yeah, generally speaking, I think like obviously I don't want to beat too much of a dead horse on this topic, and I've kind of put my final say on it. I think the honeymoon period is kind of good that it's over, and there's a kind of like a deep sense of reflection for me. And my personally, like I played the first Life is Strange game multiple times, played it on like mobile devices, reviewed it on that for put it on as a Metacritic as well. That because like that, for example, when they did the mobile version, they had a photo mode in it. I was like, I wish there maybe would have been a photo mode in this game, even though she's not got a camera or anything. Like it just, you know,
it would have been nice.
Yeah. I feel like those kind of like little sort of features when they added it to the port version of the Life is Strange game, I was like, maybe obviously it seems like fans would like love something like this. But yeah, I played that multiple times, and I've only played this one once, and I played Life is Strange 2, I think twice. I played it through fully twice, and then I played BTS twice through. So like, this is one where it's like, this one's not really me sitting there playing it loads and loads of times. So I will go back and explore it, because I think like I want to gauge it a bit more. But I think personally speaking, what it was doing and the way it handled certain things, I don't think my opinion is really going to change too much on it.
That's fair.
I think I like it. I think what they did was wonderful, Deck 9, and they deserve all the credit they did, but I think it's flawed in parts, and I think that's what holds it back for me and puts it like third in my rankings essentially.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Fair enough. But yeah. That's all I got to say.
Indeed, very very juicy thing. But yeah, if you obviously as we've given our ideas about the honeymoon topic area, you should let us know in the comments. I like hearing people's thoughts, and there were very different views on our Wavelengths episode and also on the True Colors review discussion. I just like seeing what people thought. Very different, and almost like me and Adam, where it's like two different perspectives. But we'll move on to the main topic of this episode of StrangeCast, which is, and we were kind of going to put it in the review episode, but obviously that went on for too long, and we had to cut that review episode down. And then obviously we moved into the Wavelengths one, and Adam kind of mentioned that we should kind of carry this over for a topic for a later date, and I feel like obviously it's perfect time. And we're not hating on True Colors again before you try and warn you, but the topic obviously is, did True Colors borrow too much from Life is Strange, or was it the right balance?
Mm-hmm. Are you asking me?
Yes.
So again, I didn't play through Life is Strange 1 fully. I just played the first episode. As we both mentioned before, our past week has been insane, so I didn't have enough time on my hand. But here's the tricky part. By the question, did True Colors borrow too much from Life is Strange? I think it's a tricky question to say because there's so much discussion, let's say. There's a lot of discussion to say, well, is True Colors a good Life is Strange game? Everybody's saying, is this a good Life is Strange game? Life is Strange game, Life is Strange game. And the only yardstick that we actually use as a Life is Strange game is Life is Strange. So when I say that, I think it does borrow a lot from, and I'll go into more detail, after I hear your opinion. But to say that, yes, it does borrow a little bit, but that's why I think a lot of people said that it was a good Life is Strange game, because they're using the yardstick of Life is Strange. So it's kind of weird to say it. It's just like, don't copy Life is Strange, but also I want Life is Strange, but also don't copy Life is Strange, but also I miss Life is Strange. You know what I mean? It's kind of a weird paradox in that way, but I do think it does borrow a good amount of formats, let's say, a lot of format from the first Life is Strange game.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of that meme where it's like, here's my homework, can I copy a bit? And it's like, cool. It's like, take most of it. Yeah. So this is where I'm really divided on it. And this is like where I think like when I come into this series at this point, and this is like where my kind of expectations, like the more I was playing it, it just kind of like kept creeping down. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of like keep stopping myself, contradicting myself. But what they were doing was right in terms of they got the right balance in terms of bringing Alex Chen in, because they were basically mimicking Max to a certain degree of, the very shy girl who doesn't like look, and she's like, you can see when you like look at her. I remember Alex walking, it's like, yeah, I can see this now. And that's not me saying in a bad way. I'm like, I can see it. So they did that. The way that I can see it, this game seems to have kept changing the story at points, the more I'm learning about it as well. And with that, for example, like we're going to start spoiler territory as well. I warn you now, because we're going to have to dig into things. It was like certain things that were happening in the story that was started like pulling at me, where I was like, why does this feel too much like Life is Strange 1? Like they should have taken certain things. I believe that they should have taken them from Life is Strange 1, but there was just too much coming back at me. And I think like obviously when we got to episode 4 on the reveal of Jettison, as we've dubbed him on here, that was like when Adam said that to me, I was like, yeah. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, it's on the same chapter as well. It's like, why don't you do it in chapter 3 or something? Like change it up. Yeah. Obviously,
the end of chapter 4 too.
Yeah,
not just chapter 4, but like at the very beat of chapter 4.
Yeah, and it was that like, and I feel like there might be a different perspective. If you never played the first Life is Strange game and you come into this one, then you'd be like, oh wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. But I remember I was playing through it and like going through things. And I think at one point where it's like Jettison drops that note through your door when Gabe's dead, and he's like, you don't have to pay the bills for like the flat and stuff like this. I remember picking that up. I generally put my control, and I was like, he's bad. He's a bad guy.
He's giving me free rent. He's got to be
bad. I have this thing sometimes with films, and like I can do it, and I'm like, yeah, that's the ending of the. It's like when if you ever watched the Dark Knight Rises, and Alfred does that speech on the stairs when he's does his extravagant quitting scene with Bruce Wayne. He says like, I imagine being in this cafe, seeing you, and we would just look at you and nod. And I just remember like sitting there. I was in IMAX, my brother leaned over to me. He's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I didn't say anything because I was like, "That's the ending." I was like, that's the ending. I was like, that is the ending. He is not going to die, Bruce Wayne. It's like, I can see it. And I hold this rule as well. It's like, same with, you don't see a body in a film, TV show, game. Expect that person to be alive. Because I did it with the Arkham Knight series as well. Arkham Knight, I did that. I was like, yeah, we're not seeing a body. This person's still alive. Bingo, it turns up. And this is the thing with Jettison. Like, there was too many telling signs. Like, right, okay, this is happening. There was too many, there was so many different mysteries going on in like Haven Springs, which they obviously did with like Life is Strange 1, but they didn't really you have to change it a little bit. It's like when you watch Scream 1 and watch Scream 2, like what Wes Craven did with those films, he changes it up a little bit and you shake things up. And my kind of potent example here, and I'm going to give it back to you in a minute, what True Colors remind me of, it's a mad example, but I'm going to bring it in. What True Colors remind me of is The Force Awakens to A New Hope. So basically, so I'm taking obviously like, right, so I'm gonna have to justify this. So 6-year series of Life is Strange 1, and then obviously a huge series with like Star Wars. But what happened with that was I love the 6 films that George Lucas made, and I think that George Lucas should be laughing himself at the way. Yeah, don't hate them.
Oh wow!
I think 1 and 2 are a bit OTT. I think he really redeemed himself in 3 with Revenge of the Sith.
Fair.
I think it's a very good film. I think it's a very good film. I think 1 and 2 he was doing certain things. I think like there could have been. For me personally, I feel like you shouldn't have killed off Darth Maul in the end of the first one. Even though you had you had Christopher Lee come in for the second one as Count Dooku, I think you could have had him just being the main villain in the third film and then having Darth Maul 1 and 2. But I'm not going to rewrite Star Wars. What I'm going to try to say is like, I love those 6 films. I thought it was really well fitted. And like, obviously at the ending, I was like, I don't need to know what happens after that. The way that it ended in Return of the Jedi, people think it's cheesy. I'm like, I love that ending. I remember watching it as a kid. I was like, yes, this is so cool. Force Yoda, Force Obi-Wan, Force Anakin, and then all that doing that cheesy photo at the end. I was like, perfect, ending, done. Then you bring in this new trilogy that they did, and they carried it on for 3 films, which is the most ridiculous trilogy I've ever seen. Because like, when I watched Force Awakens, everyone was raving about it. I went and watched it. I was like, it's okay, but it's basically A New Hope with 3 new characters who I don't care about, who are nowhere near as interesting as the 3 that George Lucas made in the original trilogy. And it takes so much from that New Hope, changes little things, and it's basically a reskin. It's like a heavy reskin. And then you get The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, which anyone who tries to say to me that The Last Jedi is a masterpiece, I genuinely question your entire taste in films.
I don't think it's a masterpiece, but after I saw, what was the third one?
Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, once I saw Rise of Skywalker, I was like, you know what? Last Jedi wasn't so bad. I was just like,
that trilogy just messed itself up. I had so many issues with The Last Jedi. I thought it was ridiculous in so many ways, especially the way that they handled Luke. You can't just turn a character like that mope. Even if Anakin had come back and like slain like 500 younglings, Luke Skywalker would never turn like that. You can't just do. There's some characters who can do that. And like I'm not going to try bring myself back in a minute, but like there's some characters who can be the old man Wolverine kind of thing. Luke Skywalker is not one of them. So like, don't try it. It doesn't work. It's ridiculous. And it made him look. I think even there were interviews where people pulled it with Mark Hamill, where his face said it a lot about it. But back on Life is Strange, I bought up the Force Awakens example for that because it's like that's what I was seeing when I was playing True Colors. I was like, there's a lot of free skins here. There's a lot of things that I keep seeing here, but it's not pushing it beyond what Life is Strange 1 did. I'm like, there's just so many similarities here. And with that, in between it, we had a wedge between Life is Strange 1, 2, and then True Colors. And I was like, you've kind of taken steps back here because whilst 2 was very divisive, I loved it. I loved that they went with a completely different story, different characters, this entire kind of like thing about them going to this, that they're on the run from the cops, going back to their father's hometown. There were so many selling points for it. And I think that was something that really got me. And then when I got to this game, I was like, did I want this? It's like, have I grown past this? It's like, but even Dontnod didn't do this. They created the series. They kind of like left a very open ending on the first one. You just mentioned it as well. Like they kind of secured Alex Chen's story. They did it like that, but then they didn't leave anything loose open where it's like, obviously there's loads of choice, but there's like 1,500 choices. Like, why just make 2? Just make 2. I don't like games that do that. I'm like, just make 2. Like there's not like, unless it's like Detroit, you can get away with it. But I think like that game is just do 2 endings. It just like simplify it. Like you've just opened up so many tangents with like Ryan coming in with this love interest. You want to be platonic. You want to stay at the, X, Y, Z, ABC. So I'll give this back to you, but that's where I stand. I bring my bold Star Wars comparison because that's where I think, like, for me, they were on the track for getting a right balance, but I think that they just kind of like went above and beyond, and I'm like, oh, maybe you should just like reeled it back in a little bit, just a little bit.
No, I get it. It's just like you said, I think it, and what I said before is that it follows the same format. It follows the same beats, but I don't think it copies it word for word. Like you said, it's kind of like the meme, like, can I copy your homework? And it's just kind of like, I'll do my own handwriting. But and I think it follows the same beats and format because so many people argue about, I want a good Life is Strange game, and they keep comparing it to the first game. And I think even for me, like a former Assassin's Creed fan, but whoa, I'm still boycotting Ubisoft. Political. I'm still boycotting it, and I will never ever purchase another Assassin's Creed game ever again. But it's back when Assassin's Creed 2 really put the series forward, and for me to keep saying like, well, it's not Assassin's Creed 2, it's not Assassin's Creed 2, it's not Assassin's Creed 2, and I keep comparing it to that. It's like, I wanted a better Assassin's Creed game. What's your better Assassin's Creed game? Assassin's Creed 2, and then they remastered it. But and I think it goes back to this, where fans are always arguing for this. And yes, like I said I would go in more detail, and you hit the same points as I was going to make it with Jettison. You have this again, put it this way, it's another like older white guy. Excuse me. This older white guy that is looked up to in the community that they're in, right? It's looked up in the community, like the community of Blackwell, really looked up to Jefferson. Excuse me, man, I'm burping. Thank you, LaCroix. But then you got Jed, who is looked up to by the team of Haven Springs. Like it's another white guy that everybody looks up to, and it's another white guy that screws everything up. I'm saying this as, oh no, phone, go away, boom. But I'm saying this as another white guy, saying all this, like, white guys screw everything up. I can say from personal experience, yeah, we screw up a lot of things. But here's my point, is that, like, yeah, it's another shy girl. It's another trusting white guy. It's another romance option. It's another, like, this and that and this. There's a lot of things in it where it's just like, it's just another this. But to your point of The Force Awakens, it follows it in the same kind of way, where it, like, in the same way that Force Awakens copied, like, air quotations here, copied A New Hope, where I think they said, like, oh, I think a lot of fans were mad at the prequel, so we'll remake the original trilogy. And I think this kind of goes into it, where it's like, oh, a lot of people were mad. A lot of people were mad at Life is Strange 2. They didn't like Life is Strange 2. Me, another white guy screwing everything up. So put that in perspective. But, I didn't like Life is Strange 2. What do you like? Life is Strange. Well, we'll copy it. Not copy it, but it's like, give you the same magic. But like you said before, and you already said this, and you hit a lot of the beats I was going to say, but it's in a way that I don't think Square Enix or Dontnod knew what they were sitting on when they first made the original Life is Strange. Like that's just it. It's that they didn't know that would be the eternal yardstick to copy. Not copy, but like, this is the format that you need to follow. But yeah, like playing the first Life is Strange game, the first episode, and playing the first episode or the first chapter of True Colors, it does follow a similar beat where it is a kind of a slow, steady move, but it doesn't recapture the magic. It's very weird, but to say it's the right balance after a month being away from it and replaying it and replaying the first Life is Strange, I don't know. I don't think it is the right balance because there's not a lot. I don't know how to put it because it's not copying it.
In between this, it's kind of build on what you just said, I can go back to the magic of Life is Strange 1 because if I load it up now, got to the ending of the first episode and see that scene where Max is at the lighthouse with Chloe and Sigma as his obstacle starts playing with the montage and she's like, Max, tell me everything. That's like, that would still hit me in the gut every time. And that's like where I'm like, oh, and the same with Gabe. Gabe's definitely like, yeah, okay, I feel that, but I wouldn't have the same effect of resonance of like what that first Life is Strange did. And even when I went back out and played it, I'd be like, I still feel this. I know everything that's going to happen, but I feel that.
True. That's true. I didn't even think about that part. You're talking about like the end of the first episode of Life is Strange where they're on the bench and
she's like that. She's like, and she doesn't even know she has like power to rewind at that point. That's when she discovers that Max is going to tell her that she can rewind time. But then you build that, you bring that relationship in closer with Chloe. You have this montage music that's playing, like showing all these characters you've interacted with the town, how they're dealing with their own little things, including like Kate Marsh and all these other like little scenes in between there. It's very like it establishes everything. It's this the entire premise of that Life is Strange 1 that Dontnod was doing was a coming of age story. And when you play 5 episodes of Life is Strange 1, it is the evolution of Max Caulfield. It is transformation from caterpillar to butterfly. That's what it is. Yeah. Even the episodes, like their names take it, including obviously episode 5 Chrysalis, like there's meaning behind it. They obviously took that impact of what a butterfly representation is. That's obviously within the butterfly effect, but within the greater scheme of what the actual story is, including Max. But like, I think you also mentioned it as well. You kind of didn't dig into it as much. It's the example of Assassin's Creed as well, because I go back and play Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood and that Ezio trilogy. This is the thing that Ubisoft suffered from, because it's almost the same as what Square Enix has suffered from with Life is Strange. Like I said, I think that they should have done a 3-part trilogy to start with Max, and then basically just gone into Life is Strange 2 and be like, we're moving to a new direction, new series, we're going to go in this kind of way. And Ubisoft hasn't done that, but what they did was they made 3 games about Ezio, and the third one lagged. It could have just been 2 parts because Brotherhood is excellent and 2 is very good.
Revelation is okay.
It's just filler. It's just extra content. They kind of brought in Altair, and at that point, I was like, maybe you should have like built on him, because I think he's underrated as hell as a character.
Altair, I
think they could. For me personally, they should just remake the first Assassin's Creed instead of making all these other games that they're making. Just remake the first Assassin's Creed and build it. It's a great character, Altair. He's almost like the same vein as Solid Snake and Cloud Strife in terms of personality. You go back and play some of those scenes of the character evolution. He's great. They just didn't really. It's a very dated game now, but.
Oh yeah.
Kind of put it into perspective. Obviously, we don't want to go on Assassin's Creed run, but it's within this kind of conversation. You know, I feel like Ubisoft were always in a shadow of themselves after like that. They were always trying to make an Ezio. Even when they brought in Arnaud Dorin from like Unity, he was so trying. He was the French Ezio. He was trying to be that person.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were trying to sell it. And I think with this, I'm not going to say Alex Chen is trying to be the Alex Chen of, you know, the Max Caulfield of this universe. I think that they just took a lot from Alex Chen, and then I kind of wanted a little bit more from her in terms of they just hammered a bit of the story home, because like even I made that controversial take in was it True Colors review where I said that you could even have had the entire story around Steph and not even included Alex Chen. They could have just taken Steph and made her the main character and gone with it that direction, because you would have had like someone completely different from Max. Like it would have been complete, and you could have included all these other little things that are happening in between it, but you could have just focused on someone who's really different, and it would have for me sold it, because like I'm in that position where I want to see maybe even the series got anthology-wise, where it's like there's a new story in between it, almost like Final Fantasy, you know, like we move into a new universe with characters and all that. And I feel like that's always what captures me. It's like we're going into something, and then if you see a reference, it's like, oh, that's really cool. And like that's where, like, for me to kind of expand on your point was that, where it's like I feel like there's no real. There's like a couple of scenes where I go back, like obviously like Alex dancing with Ducky, her putting on the headset, and you know Dido's playing. I feel like there's some scenes where it really stands out for me. I'm like, this is great, but the magic is what sells it. And I think that's the problem with it. It's like when you go back and watch those, and this goes back to my argument, if you go back and watch those 3 Star Wars films, Star Wars A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back, even though I put those in the wrong order, those 3 films, and then you play like Life is Strange 1 and you're like, oof, this is magic. Like this is magic. And then 2 for me is a bit divided, but I think that's magic as well. And then 3, even True Colors, I think is magic to an extent, but it's a reinvented magic. And I don't think it captures what the first one did, which is like what its format is basically art. Because like, I know I've seen people in the community say like, nothing will ever beat Life is Strange 1 for some people. Nothing will ever do this. I'm like, it's a high benchmark because it's a deeply flawed game. Like in terms of writing, in terms of dialogue, we criticize the living hell out of it. Reviewers, I was a review, including one of those people. You can go look it up, but it was a great game. it was fascinating. Like I can sell it to people. I'm like, if you go and play it, there's something about it which is like mesmerizing. I've like read essays where people have like talked about like, you know, Max Caulfield, they say like, is she autistic? The way she moves, her mannerisms, like all this kind of thing. Like she doesn't make eye contact with people. Alex Chen doesn't make eye contact with people. Are they kind of like drawing these kind of examples with it? And when you like break down the intricacy, obviously I don't know, like I haven't had a chance to ever speak to developers, like kind of break down that kind of thing. But like there are conversations about her maybe being autistic, because like even the way she moves, I remember when Max moved for the first time, I was like, she walks very interesting. I was like, I kind of know why she might be walking that way. Maybe I think maybe it is that. And obviously, like when I spoke to Serena, who did Max's mocap, I even mentioned it because I watched a French interview of her, and she said like, yeah, they made me walk in a certain way, like, you know, because she's walking like certain kind of, obviously she's not like Chloe Price. Like if you watch Max move, she moves in a very specific way. And like people still like write essays about that game. There's so much philosophical kind of things you can break into what the Dontnod team are writing. I feel like with the True Colors, that's where it's a bit like, I was coming into it and I was like, let's sit down, play it. And like when I keep playing it, I was like, I want to enjoy it. And in my mind, I was like, you need to enjoy this. You like Deck 9, you don't want to rip on them and shit on them. And I'm not shitting on them at all, because I love them as well. I think what they've had to deal with and the cards they've been dealt, they've done very good work with it. But in my mind, I was like, it needs to be good, But then I was just thinking, I was like, Ray, you know, right. You know, as I was thinking all these other characters out from like Force Awakens, I was like,
Let's go back on your Star Wars thing, even like something that came to mind is that like they didn't even know what they were sitting on. You probably know this fun fact about the first Star Wars movie is that George Lucas had zero faith in the first Star Wars. In fact, when it aired, he flew out to Hawaii. Like he didn't even want to be like in like, okay, when I say the United States, I'm talking about, you know, the United States. I know Hawaii is part of the United. Stop. I live here. Okay. But he didn't even want to be in the States. Like in the premiere, he wanted to escape because he did not want to deal with the ridicule. He thought he had.
Man almost had a heart attack on set because people weren't taking it serious.
Yeah, because in the last scene of A New Hope, in the final scene where they're getting the medals and all that, the whole crew that's like in the crowd, right? They're just like laughing and like gesturing. They're just saying like, this movie's awful. Why are we even here? Like they're in production. They're actually making fun of the movie that they are in because they thought that was that much of a stinker.
Yeah, but it's one of those because like you will never be able to preempt it, because like same with like if we were looking at the state of the Friday the 13th films and Nightmare films and stuff like that. Oh. Halloween, like you just don't never expect like, you know, William Shatner's like mask to be like an iconic horror villain like many years later. And the same with like Star Wars. I don't think anyone expected, because it's very goofy, and especially for that time period, you're like, oh, and obviously what George Lucas had envisioned is very, very, Jesus Christ, like that man deserves more credit than anything else. And if you ever share on George Lucas, remember one thing, you will never ever have the industry you have right now. So appreciate that man fully 100%. Right. Because even if you think he, quote unquote, butchered this prequels with Jar Jar Binks, get over yourself. He made a film, he made a ton of money, and he made more and more of it, and he kept the rights for a long time because he didn't want people to butcher it. And what happened? He gave the rights away, and they butchered it with this new trilogy. I will fight any person on those three films because they're terrible, the new ones. But anyway, back on point, because I don't want to go too much on rant. This is the thing with Life is Strange. It's in like a very, we had that topic conversation on your podcast where it's like, you know, what's the future for Life is Strange? We've seen a bit more now because we've had this game come out, and it's like, there's still there. It's got potential. And it's like, it's not obviously Final Fantasy level status, but it's an established franchise. It's like, where do we go from this? How do we sell things? And it was just that, I think for me personally, my experience of going from Life is Strange 1, playing, I was like, this is magic. I was like, this is truly magic. And then playing Before Storm, I was like, okay, it's nice. It's got some great scenes in it. It's got some of my favorite scenes in it. It's got my favorite character in it as well. It's Rachel Amber. They put so much focus on her. And then when I moved to 2, I remember playing it first. I was like, maybe I won't like this. But then I was like, wait a minute. It's like, I'm not liking it for that reason. It's not the magic that's capturing me in this game. There's something else about it. And for me, it was that more about, they changed the journey of like the Sean angle, where it's like, we're going this journey with this young Mexican American, even though some of the themes were heavy handed for some people. But, you know, that we have this young kid who's on the run from, you know, he's been framed for a murder that he of his dad, which isn't that. But they fleshed out the scenes, and like, I think Deck 9 did that greatly with some of the scenes where I had like, you know, Alex and Gabe outside in the decking chairs, and it gave me big vibes of like Karen Sean like outside having a fight. Like that's for me is like some of the greatest scenes. And obviously I spoke to Jolene. I thought her character was fantastic. She's so cool. She's just like she's the mum who's just like, she feels torn about who she is. And like, she feels for Sean, but then she wants to be herself. And like the scenes when she's sitting outside with Sean and like she's having a cigarette. And even those scenes where like,
my favorite episode from yours, by the way, my favorite episode of Life After Strange was the Jolene episode for sure.
Yeah. Like she's just very, cause she's that kind of person. Like even the way she was saying to me, she's like, I didn't think they would write a character for me like this. I just love how simple she was. Like, but she's simple in like a very complex way. This woman who's like, she feels it. She like, if you met her, you can probably meet her in a bar in that kind of person. She felt that believable. And same with Esteban. Like when you had like Esteban there, he's like turning up and talking to Sean. There was like something deep with it. And I think like for me, I wish that, and it might have actually overdone it, but like you had those scenes where you go up to like the decking chairs and you'd have more scenes with Gabe early on. And he'd sit there, Alex, like, because when he hit early on, because obviously, like, as I said to you, like, they told us before, like, basically she's gone back there, her brother's died. And like, when it happened, I was sitting at the end of it, so I was like, when is this guy going to die? I was like, he's going to die, obviously. Gabe is going to die right now. And then when that happened, I was like, I wish they would have kept it secret and then maybe kept him for 2 episodes and we had more of the relationship. And then you have a bang, and it's like, oh no, they just killed Gabe. It's like, Gabe's dead. I'm not trying to be that guy who like rewrites games, but I'm just like, there was just this with where I think like if we're in the topic of things that we're talking about, they got a right balance on certain things. And I think like they did their own game, but I think like the way that the game's been rewritten and changed from what I can tell and certain things that were changing, I was like, I think that they took a lot from it. But for me, I just can't get rid of that Force Awakens mentality where it's like J.J. Abrams has come in, taking George Lucas's vision and like reskinned it. And I think obviously it appeals to a lot of people. I know people love The Force Awakens, but I'm just a bit like...
Well, like to your point again, in that trilogy, and then we talked about this more in this episode where they could be changing directors. Mm-hmm. What happened with Rian Johnson, is another director with another vision. And a lot of people hated Rian Johnson's vision of it. I thought after watching Rise of Skywalker, which went back to J.J. Abrams, it was supposed to be, I can't remember who the director was supposed to be, but I remember people got so infuriated that it wasn't JJ, that they brought it back to JJ, which I'm watching Lost for the first time. So
whoa, you're watching Lost
for the very first time ever.
Oh my God. You do not know how much of a Lost freak I am. Oh my God.
And I was just like, guys, my wife has watched the first season, but she hasn't watched anything past that. So I'm 3 or 4 episodes in. So
it's incredible.
I love. Oh well, I won't go off too long, but yeah, I do like the nuances of everybody, especially when Saeed, I think it was his name, Saeed, when like like him and Hurley were just like trying to connect with each other, like, oh, Army, yeah, I was in the Army. Oh, I know a friend in the Army. He was in the Gulf War. Where were you? The Air Force? And he's like,
Republic of God.
Yeah, the Republic of the Guard. He's like, oh, I love that dynamic. Like, I loved it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but anyways,
anyways, we'll come back onto the podcast. And I'm apologizing about the Star Wars analogy because we'll bring it in because I think it's good for the conversation. But I'm kind of put this in as well. Lost is my favorite TV show. It is the greatest TV show I've made, and I will argue that any single day in the comment section.
I'm a big Breaking Bad fan, though. Like, have you seen Breaking Bad?
Yes, but dated now. If you go back and watch the first 2 seasons, I've even know people who
will go back to watch the first 2 seasons just now.
Well, I know people love it. I know I still love it because I feel like I've had friends who've gone back and watched it recently and they've found it dated. I feel like the first few seasons are very slow now when you go back and watch it.
No, not me, because like I think it's a great slow pace. You don't just get into the drug game out of nowhere. It's a very slow burn. And put this in perspective is that the entire series up until halfway through season 5 is only a year. Like it's only a year long. So like the fact that like all this stuff is happening within a year, especially after living through 2020, I think it's even more relevant than it is ever before. But that's just me. I am the Breaking Bad. Like I am okay.
Well, we'll talk about self podcast because I will bring you up. But I will say that Dead Freight is one of my favorite episodes ever made. I think it's fantastic. Okay. That's just unbelievable. So, but coming back onto the point of this as well, I kind of wanted to pick your brain about something because obviously we're talking about did it take too much of a right balance from Life is Strange 1, and apologies guys if we got caught on that. Him mentioning Lost has completely thrown me right now. But on this as well, like Life is Strange 1, I mentioned the Jettison thing. You mentioned about the white dude and all that. Did you start picking up the story points of this? Like, for example, did you clock on Jettison very early like I did? And I'm not sitting here with like, I want a trophy saying that I figured out here's the big twist. I'm like, I clocked on. When did you clock on that? Was it when, I think in the podcast episode, the review one, was it just before he clocked the gun or something?
Yeah, no. So like that was like the official. So like I kind of clocked into on it maybe like episode 2, right? And definitely episode 3 when he played the villain in and like the word I'm looking for with Steph's game.
The LARP.
Thank you, the LARP. I just lost it for a second, but I kind of picked up on it. But like in episode 2, I was like, no, they want to do that. Like they gotta do something different because it's way too predictable. Like I have faith in Dick Nine. This is a red herring, just like what's his face? Mac. Just like Mac is a red herring. Jed is now a red herring. I think they're throwing 2 red herrings at us. 2 is better than 1. But when it was official, I was like, oh, great. Because when he said like, oh, it's out in the woods. Let me go show you. I was like, and we're dead. Great. It's just like.
See, well, it's those kind of moments where I feel like if we were taking back to 1, for example, why they had a bad balance with it. Because I never clocked onto Jefferson. When he turns up and shoots Chloe in the head, I was like, God damn it! I did not expect that at all because they had this thing with the story which was clever because like they were throwing me for a loop because obviously like when I said to you like Mac's almost like the Nathan Prescott, you clock on now because obviously like as I said we're playing from a perspective of fans who know the series and I think most people will come in with that expectation even though that obviously this is a new entry. They're going to try and mark it out to everyone.
Yeah.
But when I was playing the first one, I was like, there was so many things going on because obviously you had the Rachel Amber storyline going on where it's like we figure out what's happened to her. You had Nathan going on who's like really kind of the big red herring. You had Jefferson, who's a bit of the weird guy, but you were like, he's too teacher. Yeah, maybe it's cliche, but it's like, no, he's not giving
too much going on right now. Yeah, he's a photographer. He's a teacher. What? He's going to murder students.
And then they kept bringing him in and out. They would kind of like, it's almost like for me, the first Life is Strange, and this is a weird kind of again, but it reminds me of Scream. It's like, do you obviously remember when you watched the first Scream with Wes Craven, how he handles characters?
Yeah.
Someone comes in, he's a suspect. He goes out. Oh, no, wait, he's a suspect. Come back out. Like, when you go back and watch
spoilers ahead for Scream, if you haven't seen Scream. Go see Scream. It is one of the most meta films that's ever been made in history.
If you have to start watching horror to really for me, I would say to people, you have to love a horror genre because it's such a great genre. When it's done right, it will blow your mind. And the first Scream...
When it's done right. Not like modern horror movies.
Yeah. And that's a difficult as well because like when you do a horror film right, it's a difficult genre to really break. And for example, Scream was that because when it was coming in and what it was doing, that was like something when I watched the first time, I was like, I don't know who's who because they were doing things like, Dewey has that scene with like Gail has that flash story. He's like, I'm gonna lie, let's go in the forest and like look for it. And you're like, oh yeah, Gail's gonna die at this point. He's like, wait a minute, she doesn't die. It's like, huh? And this is the same thing with the first Life is Strange. It was like those scenes where it's like you see Jefferson come in, he's being a bit creepy with Max. He's like, oh yeah, I'll make you part of my art and something like that. And he'd be like very low key and coy. But then he'd turn his attention to Victoria or he'd like turn his attention to something else. And then at the same time, you're processing like, I don't care about what this guy's thinking. He can be a creep all he wants. I'm trying to figure out what's happened to Rachel Amber and what's happened to Chloe and about relationships. So they were throwing you for a loop. But this one, for example, True Colors, they brought in the Typhon story, the gay part. It was just like, my focus was like that in one line. It was like that. There was no kind of like other thing that was kind of like changing my mind of like where Alex is going. They obviously had the love interest and other things, but like it was starting to clock on really easy. And it was like, I can't just point at suspects like, Ryan's not obviously involved with this, but like who's obviously involved in this? You bring in Diane, you bring in like Jettison. It's like, and you kind of like, you have a limited cast of characters, especially with Jettison. I was like looking at it, it's like, it's got to be you now, hasn't it? Because like, if I'm bringing this down, obviously like Riley's mom ain't going to go push this button or something, like this big kind of like twist or something. It was kind of like starting to unravel a little bit. And I think like that's where, with that first Life is Strange, it's so that balance to get for any developers to go look at what Michelle, Raul, and the rest of the Dontnod team, Luke, all those guys, that's just difficult. And I think like I would love to kind of just sit down with them and just see what they thought about that. Because I think that even they just didn't expect like the things that they were like unraveling and breaking. And like you go back into that game, you play it. And even if I went back and played it now, there'll be magical moments. There'll be more magical moments because there's so many stories going on. The Rachel Amber story, the Max coming of age story, the friendship story with Chloe, this difficulty with some person. You have a red herring with David Madsen as well, who's like a fantastic character. His like redemption story as well, when he turns up and like starts beating Jefferson to oblivion in the dark room. It's so cool. There's just those moments where it's like you cheer for these characters, you care for these characters, and they never really sidelined anyone either. It was always like that level of it. And I think like with us, it's like when you mentioned in the review episode, it's like Michelle tweeted where he's like, why can't I make Riley my love interest? And you're like, I was like, yeah. I was like, I really like Riley. Low key, she was like really cool. It's like really chill like character. I was like, interesting.
Yeah. I would love to know the perspective of somebody who played Life is Strange True Colors, who had never played a Life is Strange game, because I think mine and yours perspective is completely flawed, because there could be somebody out there, because me and you have played the first Life is Strange over and over and over again. You probably played Life is Strange more than I have. That's not even a question. You have played Life is Strange more than I have. But I wonder, from a perspective of somebody who's just played True Colors for the very first time, did they pick up on Jed? Because for us, it's like, okay, here's the same beats. It's kind of going through like a time loop, you know, where we're just like in that time loop of like, this event will happen, this will happen, and we felt like we were in a time loop in that sort of way, where we started to figure it out. It's kind of like the game 12 Minutes, if you haven't played 12 Minutes yet. But
I haven't played it, but I've seen it. It looks cool.
It's really cool in the way of just like the frustration of a time loop, because you know what's about to happen. And I think that's what we had as Life is Strange fans, because we were going through the motions again, and we're like, okay, it's Jefferson or Jettison.
Well, you can change things. Like if you watch French cinema, for example, like Run Lola Run, if you've ever seen that, it's like a loop film, and it does it. And if you like, again, for example, of like my appreciation for Kojima, but if you played PT, for example, you go down the hallway, you open the door, it's the same thing, but then it's different. There's something there. You know there's something there, but it's like, what is it? And that's what you're like, that's where, for me, it was like when I remember turning up in Arcade eBay, it's like, there's a picture of Rachel Amber. I'm like, who is this girl? It's like, what is she? Like, why does everyone love her? But then why is she gone disappearing? Like, what's the reason behind it? Why are these characters obviously hiding something else from me and from Max and Chloe? Like, you know, this part and that part. But I never really had that curiosity. I don't know why I'm whispering, but I don't know why. That's what I missed from like with True Colors. Like, there wasn't that where it's like hooking me. It's like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Like, you know, this and that. There was like, they had the skin from, they have foundation from Life is Strange, and they pluck certain things, but then they didn't really take the game that I wanted to in the way that I wanted Deck 9 to do, where they're basically like, we're going to make this our own Life is Strange game. It's going to have some really mad, cool things that are happening, and this is going to happen. And it just didn't feel like, I went to the end, and obviously I think like my perspective of the ending has changed a bit in terms of when, you know, Alex is confronting Jed in the kind of like, and she goes like dark, the screen goes dark around her, and she's like really kind of breaking into his emotions and stuff, and like breaking his kind of like mind kind of thing like that. Yeah. I thought that was really cool, but it just didn't have those moments where it's like with Max in the first game, where she's like, with like, you know, when she turns up at like the roof and Kate jumps off, and then it's like she loses her powers, and you're like, oh god damn, it's like this is a curveball being thrown right in here that I don't have my powers anymore.
There wasn't really many curveballs in True Colors though.
It was very linear in terms of it was going in one direction, and there's certain things that can like move the direction of like the emotions and like the storyline, but there was just like, it's very straight on the point of that. I feel like that's where I was the thing, but like I remember seeing like with Daniel, where it's like you just like blow down a house or something like that, and you're like, his powers are kind of like coming into effect, and you're like, I have no control of this. So obviously my choice is whatever I do, whether even if it seems small or big, I have to think as Big Brother mentality, what happens here, I focus on this. But at the same time, you have all Sean's story, where it's like in the fourth episode where he's going for like adversity, he's getting kicked down, he's in the church trying to win back Daniel, he gets like berated by those bunch of racists in the thingy, he has a love interest in Cassidy or Finn, you meet drifters, there's so much going on between it, but like, you know, and then obviously you have the main arching thing. I just think it missed that. And then when I kind of got towards the end, it was like, right, it wasn't hugely satisfying, because like, even I think I remember playing the first Life is Strange, and then the ending I picked obviously Save the Bay, because Chloe's the best. I saved her, and I remember seeing people saying like it's not necessarily the best ending in terms of like her just driving off with Chloe and being like, whatever.
Best ending. Pompidou lives.
No, not that Bay.
Oh,
The Bay, the only ending, as all my listeners know, that is the only ending, and every person who ever's come on Life is Strange
Small Bay, not Arcadia Bay.
The Bay. So like that ending was a little bit, I remember people saying it's a little bit disappointing. Obviously, when you go back and see the one where Chloe dies, which I think is kind of one what has to meant to be happening, and have the funeral, that's kind of like really cool setups. Really, it's just very emotional. I think that's where I was like, yeah, it's fantastic. This. So I feel like, generally speaking, that's where I'm at. And I feel like we brought on a lot of good examples in terms of like Scream, in terms of Star Wars, in terms of Assassin's Creed, because I feel like they all help. And I think like you played Assassin's Creed, I know that kind of feeling where it's like you played the Ezio story, and then for me it's like Ubisoft been lingering on that. Not saying that they haven't had great games come in the series where they have like the I love Black Flag's battleship mechanics. I love that game. I didn't think Edward Kenway is like a huge great character. I wasn't really interested in the story, but the gameplay was fascinating. Like I loved it so much, but they've always been clung on to that thing, and I was like, why don't you just go back, remake in the first Assassin's Creed, or kind of like really separate it and stop trying to be Ezio, because you're never going to create something like that again, because it was a one-off thing. He captivated people. You had an opportunity, you took it. And the same with Max as well. It's like you had this opportunity with her. Do you really want Alex Chen to really be too much of a carbon copy, even though you have added your own personality? But it's like, even when she plays guitar, I'm like
she could have played like bass at least,
yeah,
with the ukulele. It had to be the acoustic guitar. It could have been the electric guitar, but it was an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, that was just like those. Obviously, you can love Alex Chen playing music and stuff like that. I was critical because I said to you, I thought that they could have just made Eric Mori singing that. Like, surprising that didn't get me more hate. But like, I'm just like, it was that moment. It's like when she's sitting there playing Creep. It's a very, very cool scene. It's thingy, but then it was a bit like, I think Max would play Creep better, to be honest.
Yeah. But, I agree.
Yeah, it's like it's a difficult one, and like I think True Colors will have more and more conversations to be had with it. I just don't think we're done with it yet, and I don't hate it. Again, like, I don't dislike it. I just think it's I think it's a very interesting entry that came into the franchise from Deck Nine at a very interesting place, especially for someone like me as a Life is Strange fan, because I was very swayed with what Life is Strange 2 did. I hold it very high in regards compared to other people,
compared to like other people, including the screen right next to you.
Yeah, not a dig. But I just think that the way they were going that direction with Dontnod, I was accepting it and moving in that direction. And I think like this one brought in certain things, which I think maybe it needed it. I think maybe the idea from Square Enix was to kind of like maybe reunify the entire fan base. And I think that maybe that probably is the right way to go about it. But I think like doing that, then you kind of like the next step, whatever the game is going to be, you're going to set yourself up for again really dividing your fans, aren't you? Because like if you're bringing people back, it's like doing what Final Fantasy 7, bringing Cloud back every other entry, because you're like, oh yeah, he's a great character, everyone loves him. But it's like with that franchise, they basically bring some people in. If it fails, for example, like Lightning, I love those games anyway. I think they're good. But like, they bring in Lightning, it fails. They bring in like I think 15 was a bit divisive with like Noctis. They bring him in, not thinking we'll move on to the next one, and eventually you'll hit somewhere where it's like, oh, everyone loves that one. They love the characters. They love this, and I think like with True Colors, I can see it. I can see loads of people loving it. I can see all this, and like I love parts of it. I love the acting. It really took the franchise to the next step, but it just, I think they just went over the mark on the right balance.
Yeah, whereas I'm on the opposite end of you, where I absolutely loved it, but I also see why people don't like it. I'm on the end of like the perspective of, yeah, I really enjoyed my time with it, but I understand the flaws behind it. I understand why people wouldn't like this game, and I completely get that. I'm not going to be out here saying it's going to be the greatest Life is Strange game ever, because there are problems. There are like certain beats that it copies. Yeah,
I think like it's just difficult to like be. It might be your very favorite Life is Strange. You might think it's the greatest. That's perfectly fine. I've seen people say it, but I feel like
I used to, and now my profile changed. So
his profile changed on the show. But yeah, Adam, I think that is a wrap. I think we've talked plenty on this episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, comment. It really does help with the channel. Thoroughly enjoyed doing this episode. There'll be more topics to come. Plenty of things to talk about with Life is Strange. Do not worry about that. Stay tuned. There will be more StrangeCast coming very soon. Take care, guys.